Welcome, everyone. I'm Kristen Hipwell, the Director of Product Marketing with Perfection Learning, and I'm excited to have each of you joining us for tonight's AP Language webinar, The Final Countdown, Last-Minute Thoughts on the AP English Exams. Before we get started tonight, two quick items. One, if you have questions during the webinar, please be sure to post them in the chat section at the bottom of your screen. Your questions will be addressed throughout the session as appropriate and at the end of the webinar. And two, Perfection Learning will be sending out an email tomorrow with both the webinar recording and the slide deck used. So you can take notes, but you'll get everything tomorrow. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our expert teachers for this evening. Dr. Brandon Abdon comes to us with over 20 years of experience in the classroom, including 12 years as a high school English teacher, many years as a professor of English and education, and time as a curriculum developer and instructional coach. In addition to his time in the classroom, Brandon has more than 10 years of experience as a consultant, and he formerly worked as the lead director for the International Advanced Placement Program at the College Board. But I like to say that our favorite credential on Brandon's resume is as senior author of Perfection Learning's AP Literature and AP Language course books by AMSCO. Brandon is joined tonight by some special guests. We have Christy Seidel, who is an AP and IB educator. She's been an AP reader, IB examiner, and teacher mentor. And she also serves as the moderator for the AP Language and Composition Teacher Facebook group. And we also have an extra special guest. Alex is joining us. He is a high school junior, and he is going to talk about his experience with taking the exam last year. Brandon, Christy, and Alex, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm going to pass the presentation off to you.
Thank you so much, Kristen. And thank you again to Christy and Alex for agreeing to be here. Alex is one of Christy's students from last year and again this year too, right, Christy? And so I don't know, Alex, I don't know what she's holding over your head to get you here, but I really appreciate you agreeing to come. And I think teachers are going to love hearing from y'all. So again, thanks everyone for being here. Just in the chat, if you would go ahead and drop in where you're from. It's great to see people from all over the country and in some cases all over the world. I just want to give a shout out to Mike Campbell. I see you coming at us from Sandy Hook, Kentucky. I know Sandy Hook really well. I'm from Eastern Kentucky myself. And so I'm not far from Huntington, West Virginia, where Michelle Brooks is here. But Christy, I don't know if I'm seeing many from Florida just yet.
No, well, I do see somebody from Macon, Georgia, Melinda from Macon. I'm from Eastman, so I was born and raised in Dodge County, graduated from Dodge County High School. I do see a couple of Floridas up there.
Yeah, I see in Alpharetta, Georgia. I remember having lived in Atlanta. I know Alpharetta all right. And I see Aaron from Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm doing a workshop in Raleigh this summer. Looking forward to that. So there's Johns Creek, Georgia. I know Johns Creek too. So, oh my gosh, Anne is on from Brazil. That's fantastic. Great to see some people. So, oh yeah, Aaron, great. You'll be at Meredith. Fantastic. I'm looking really forward to that. People from Bolivia. Alex, you had no idea you were going worldwide today, did you? I mean, it's crazy. So, all right. So Alex is here to talk to us a little bit about his experience having taken the exam and preparing for the exam last year, and we'll get to that. But I just want to get to a couple of things here first. So we've called this the final countdown. That's really where we are next week and the week after. And we know with so many AP exams and other things going on, it's hard really to get much more covered. And so we really just wanted to have some discussions with you all about this last minute push to the exams. And you see on the screen right now, I'm thinking exam and chat, and that's what we're going to be doing. So if you could go ahead and find your all's chat buttons. I know a lot of you already have when you're posting where you're from on here, but it'd be great to go ahead and find that again, just to make sure you've got it, because we're going to be asking you all to participate and be responding to some of your all's questions here. So let's go ahead and start with this in that chat box. And I'm going to ask Christy to start with this, what she thinks.
Brandon, I'm so sorry. For some reason, I'm only seeing the desktop. I don't know about everybody else.
I don't think you're sharing your screen, Brandon.
Oh, you're not seeing the presentation at all. Oh, I'm so sorry. That is so embarrassing. So let me try that again. because I had started sharing and had no clue. So let me try it one more time. So,
There we go.
is that better?
You're
All
good.
right. I'm so sorry, everyone. You know, you think everything's ready. So, so here's what I was talking about with the exam and the chat. But here's our first question. If you find your chat, what are students most prepared for, you think? And I'd like to start with Christy, and then maybe Christy, you can hand it over to Alex while he thinks about what he thought he was most prepared for going into the exam.
Personally, the timing. We've done a lot of work with making sure that that's something we can control, because we can't control what prompt we're going to get, what questions we're going to be asked, you know. And so the actual skill of controlling the nerves of the timing and such is something that, you know, it's not content, but it's what I think is the students are most prepared for right now.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment to think that, you know, we've given this time to drilling and planning around things. And so we really may feel like it's the timing that we're most prepared for. Alex, what about you? Maybe that was it. Maybe there was something else that you really prepared yourself for.
Yeah, but in addition to like timing, it kind of goes along with it, like the structure of the test. Cause I remember making like almost like a little game plan just in case, like cause as Ms. Seidel said, like you can't really like control the content that you're seeing on the test, but you can like make like, oh, if question, let's say the rhetorical analysis is harder than, or I find the rhetorical analysis easy, I'm gonna start it right away. If it's hard, then I might start the synthesis because I know I can master that. So, I mean, it depends on what like each student's strong in, but for me, I felt prepared knowing like well what each question was about and knowing exactly what I had to do to get the best score possible, if that makes sense.
I think it does. And I think you talk about you having your own approach and your own game plan. You mentioned it a little bit about that. But any other details I think you could give the teachers, I think they'd love to hear it.
Also, I feel like I felt like I was most prepared for the like in terms of like essay wise, I think the synthesis essay, because I mean we had practice about like with whatever, like how like that's something we've always written, like we have always had to synthesize information that they provided us, whether it be like standardized tests from the states, but all we had to do with that was just shrink it down into a 40-minute period instead of it being like an hour and a half long period. Another thing that I felt confident in was the multiple choice. It's the only, again, it was just the timing that was the problem and just kind of getting up to speed with it. But yeah, I think Miss Seidel nailed it when she said like the timing part is what they're most prepared for after like the entire year of prepping for it.
Right. You know, one of the things that I've noticed as I've gone around working with different classrooms, working with different teachers, that I could say that I think students are the most prepared for relates to what you all are talking about, the layout of the exam. Teachers, you all are doing a fantastic job of letting students know what they are going to be facing, what they're going to be seeing, especially when I think about the multiple choice and the shift to the new multiple choice types in AP language. Teachers pretty quickly realize that those composition questions, even though there's fewer of them, they're taking longer. And you guys the kids know this. You're talking to the kids about it. So I would say that that's what they're most prepared for specifically is the timing with the multiple choice. And the other thing really just this year that has hit me in some of the work I've been doing, you know, I was just in Lexington, Kentucky yesterday. And the students really surprised me with this, but then in Brownsville, Texas, 2 weeks ago, I was really surprised with it, is on the synthesis, making sure that their argument is central. I think people have finally got across that we have to focus on the argument, not the sources. And that, I mean, if you've ever been a reader for the synthesis question, that is a relief to hear, because I get kind of tired of reading source tours where I'm just reading what the sources are about constantly. So that's great. All right. Well, I'm not really seeing anything drop into the chat from you all, from the attendees, about what students might be the most prepared for. So if something crosses your mind about what your students seem the most prepared for, we'd love to hear it. You can drop it in the chat. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and move on. And I know there's lots of things I would like students to be more prepared for, but I really want to focus on the thing that we think students are least prepared for. And it'll be interesting to hear from Alex on this too. And I encourage you guys, those of you who are joining us tonight, go ahead and drop that in the chat too. What do you think your students are the least prepared for? So Christy, I'm going to kick this one to you now too.
I think that every year, what I see not only in my own classroom, but at the reading, is obviously rhetorical analysis still, continues to be sort of that beast of burden, so to speak. I kind of did an informal conversation starter in the Facebook group today and just said, hey, what are you still worried about? And I'm seeing it over in the chat right now too. A lot of that multiple choice, being really worried about multiple choice. And I think perhaps that stems from the fact that we have, decades of FRQ prompts at our disposal that we can see, that we can, it's tangible, we can look at it, we can have our kids look at it. And so it feels like no surprise. Alex said, that he felt better being able to go into the exam without surprises. He knew what he was going to face. And I would like him to talk a little later, maybe toward the end of the session, about the game plan that he was mentioning, because we talk a lot about that in here leading up to the exam, is making your own game plan. So I'm hoping he'll kind of talk about different types of game plans that kids can make. But I'm seeing, a lot of that multiple choice is what people feel least confidently about with their students. And I think there is less of that tangibly for us to put our hands on, for our kids to put our hands on. And so I think it feels a little more uncertain compared to the FRQs. Maybe somebody in the chat can, verify if that's part of it or not. I don't know, but that's just kind of what I think. But rhetorical analysis always continues to be a little bit of a bear because it's something new. Again, of course, Alex, smart as he is, mentioning standardized tests and stuff. Our kids are so used to, they're writing arguments from the time they're in elementary school and being tested. They are working with sources on a lot of the different statewide tests and things like that. But rhetorical analysis tends to be something, quote, new to them. It's not new to them, but they think it's new because it's never presented. It's not called rhetorical analysis. You have to teach them that they argue every day, they persuade every day, but they don't look at it like that. So for me, that's that. That was the really long, short answer.
And Alex, what about you? What did you feel when you think back to this test last year that you were least prepared for?
Again, Ms. Seidel said it, the rhetorical analysis, but going off what she said about how it's new, but it's not new to us. It's kind of like, it's hard to grasp that it's something that we've been so like we use it every day in our lives, whether it's trying to convince a teacher to extend a deadline or trying to, or even if it's about writing an essay, but because it's kind of like two big words, like rhetorical analysis, like you're kind of put off by it a little bit, but it's kind of just, you got to like calm down and realize that this is something that you've been doing. And I remember going into it, I still didn't fully understand what it is that I was doing because of how, like, I feel like I was overcomplicating it. And going back to the multiple choice, I feel like the hardest thing about that was like the lack of practice available, because we can do the, like on AP Classroom, you have the progress checks, but those aren't like full length, and so it's kind of hard. You can do like the timing of certain sections, but it's kind of hard to get like that full test like environment going with just those because they aren't released. So
Thank you for that. Yes, and we've had a lot of comments coming in here. And Alex, it's great to hear you talking about AP Central and AP Classroom, because I know a lot of teachers are using it in different ways. But also, it seems like you're saying that maybe some time, you may have benefited from some more time with full test sets. Is that right?
yeah, like getting the feel, like kind of like building testing stamina, but for the multiple choice part, and less for the essay portion, because like the essay portion is easier to get the test, like you can fit in if but then again, it's different with different schools, because with my school it's block scheduling, so you can fit in maybe 2 essays if you cram it, but for I don't know if it's single block or half block, it's kind of hard to get that test stamina unless you stay after school. So I feel like another thing that I was a little worried about was my test stamina, and not really knowing if I would be able to write 3 essays back to back, or because I was used to doing it, having like a break in between. So that was another worry, or something that I was I feel like I was underprepared for.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment, about, what you're calling test stamina. I like that. I like that phrase a lot too. And of course, there is no doubt in my mind that Miss Seidel gave you plenty of time to practice when she could. But we all feel like we could have some more like that. And yeah, she's calling you right now. She's like, yeah, it's going to be a bad Thursday for you if you don't agree with me on that one. So, all right. Well, I've seen a lot of comments coming in here from some people, and I kind of want to ask some people to come off mute and talk a little bit more, because I want to learn from you all, and I think your colleagues do too. But Teresa Newman, if you don't mind coming off of mute, or one of my colleagues at Perfection can help you come off of mute. It'd be great to hear. I love what you say about tying the purpose of rhetorical analysis to moving the audience. And we talk a lot about choices and why those choices have been made. So can you say a little bit more about that, Teresa? I appreciate your comment a lot. Teresa, you may have to unmute yourself. Is it not working? I guess not. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry about that, Teresa. I don't know what in the past it has worked when we've done that. But I really appreciate what she says here, Christy, because she says, if I can find it exactly, she says tying purpose of rhetorical analysis to moving the audience. And I'm taking that as tying the choices that a writer makes to being for the audience in order to accomplish a purpose. And that's that commentary, that's that explanation. Oh, Teresa, it worked. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I had to step away really quickly. So the kids will identify choices, but they struggle to talk about how those choices are moving the audience. Like, why did the author, the speaker, have to put that choice at that moment? And I often tell them, look at the end, and why couldn't the speaker start there? Why couldn't Florence Kelly tell the kids to tell those women to start by asking the working men to help them? Well, because she would have been laughed out of the auditorium. They were there for women's rights, not to ask men for help. She had to make those women feel horrible and guilty before they would take the one step that was scary but would be successful.
So I really think that I really like that idea, getting students to recognize what they're trying to accomplish at the end, and then say, why couldn't they start there? And it really, and this is teacher talk, right? That's inductive, deductive reasoning. Why do they have to do this? Why do they have to follow a certain line of reasoning to get them there? And recognizing the importance of those choices. And so I think that's something I see a lot of in the commentary the students are missing. Christy, when you hear that, what comes to mind for you? And you may need to think on it for a moment. That's fine too, because there's a lot there.
So, I think right now, today was, it's an all lit day right now. So I'm thinking, I got a lit brain and a lame brain going on. And so I'm thinking complexities and tensions, which I'm going to bring up, I don't know, in some later slide or something if we get there. But, for me, it's always about telling the kids that College Board or ETS, whatever, is never going to give them something that is, very one-dimensional, that it's very just cut and dried, that it's this person is saying this to this person and that's it. That the whole idea here is that, this is an advanced placement exam, it's college level, blah, 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 however you want to word it, but regardless, it's rich. What you're getting is rich. And so there should never be something that is just, this person is trying to convince this person to do this. There's got to be some sort of tension happening. They're trying to convince them of this, but what's standing in the way? Or what might be that barrier? Or the tension exists because of this history in the past, or the tension exists because there's this third party creating it. But somewhere, somehow, there is a tension, there is a complexity. And so the kids should be thinking always in terms of there's this, but that, there's this, yet that. And if they do that, not only do I think it gives them a greater understanding of the piece, but I think, that all elusive question that, kids always want to ask the teachers and teachers want to ask, row C, row C, row C. I think you're almost guaranteed to get a thesis point, because I think that thesis is, you cannot be any more clear with an argument that is complex. If you identify that tension that's in a speech or a letter or whatever. But on top of that, if you carry that tension throughout your entire analysis, I think it gives the students a very good chance of getting that row C point. Because one of the points that I'm going to make later, but I'll go ahead and make it now because I know we're going to be short on time soon, is the whole idea of the unicorn. Is not a unicorn anymore. It's just not. The reality is row C going to be, something that is going to be the least earned point? Yes, absolutely. It will be the least earned point, but it's not the unicorn that if you've been doing this for a long time, and if you've been a reader for a long time or been around a reader for a long time, then this unicorn concept has been there. The student that got the 9 on the essay, we don't have 9. It's 1 to 6. It's one row, and you can get it by writing well, just having a nice, vivid, persuasive style, just pretty writing. Even if your understanding is just kind of, okay, it's all right, you can still get it. You could get that point by, again, those complexities, those tensions. There's this, but that, but there's this, but this barrier, but this person. It's not a unicorn. We are, as readers, there's not this concept of, well, I just gave a few row C points, let me not do that anymore. And I really want the students to know this. Please tell your students that this is not I just can't give this because I can only give like 1 out of every 100. It's not like that anymore. So anyway, soapbox, I'm off. Go ahead, Brandon.
You are here precisely to get on a soapbox, so no worries at all. And I really appreciate you saying that. It's real, unicorns really do exist, and students can write them, and students can get to that point. And I'm really glad you bring that up, and we will try to get to that. Julia asked a question about students really needed to break down the prompt and the rhetorical situation, and I think so, Julia. We tried to codify in those prompts that certain information always be given so that students can do just that with the prompt. And sometimes if it's not given in the prompt, it's given in the passage itself. So you might think about that, but spending time breaking those things down, that's something that I definitely work on a lot in my workshops with teachers, is how they could get students to do that a little bit more. Alex, I'm going to ask you, and I know you got lit on the mind, and you should, because you've got the test coming up. So maybe this will be lit as well. But when you think about the prompts, how do you break down the prompts that are given to you? How do you think about the prompts before you start writing about them?
I remember back in my Lang days,
I just
breaking
have
down
to
the
laugh. I'm
prompt.
sorry. Back in my Lang days, it's like
Yeah,
back in
my
the
Lang
day,
days.
right? Sorry. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Go ahead.
A big part of it was, especially with like whenever I encountered a speech, going through that like the little excerpt they give you that fills you in on what was going on. Like the time period can be a big indicator of why like a certain speaker chose to incorporate a certain metaphor or comparison or include a certain piece of text at the end rather than the beginning. Knowing what was going on in that time is like the historical context of that piece of writing is a big part that helped kind of help with my 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 elaboration part or my commentary part, because the locating the choices, as Teresa said, isn't that's not the hard part for students. It's just explaining why this and why this there. So I feel like historical context was a big part, but that's kind of hard because not everything would, like, you're not expected as a student to have background historical information about that. So in cases that I wouldn't, I would, it's kind of hard because it's situational and it was from kind of a long time ago, but it's kind of just getting an idea of the flow of the passage, if that makes sense. Like the it comes with what Miss Ida was saying, like the tension within it. But breaking, I feel like the biggest part from the prompt, if you can, is the historical context. For me, at least, that was something that helped a lot.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of, I mean, Alex, I think you just made a ton of fans in the audience here, from teachers and the couple of students who have been able to join us. And that's something that, especially if you have a good U.S. history or world history program teaching with you, you're able to draw on those sorts of ideas in your, or if you're teaching in a district where you teach some literary history as well at the same time. I know some of places are doing that. So we could keep going on this, but I want to keep moving on here. I think this is really, really useful so far. And so this is really going to put you on the spot, Alex. So again, I'm going to kick it to Miss Seidel to think about it before I kick it to you. But how do you review? And I have that in quotation marks because I don't really know if you can review because it's such a skills-based test. But how do you review in the last week? And as we've been doing, if you're attending tonight, please find the chat and drop in what you do. We'd love to hear from you too. Christy?
So the last couple times I see them, sometimes it's the week of the exam, sometimes not. We have kind of, it might be an anomaly for some schools, maybe not. Our school is a testing factory in May. I mean, between AP and IB, I mean, sometimes my lit students tomorrow will be the last time I see some of them until they take their exam next week, you know, so whether it's the last week or the last days, whatever, I typically take that last block period or two, and no more timed writes, no more any of that. I answer last minute questions they have. Sometimes, are they questions that I've answered 50,000 times since August? Yes, sometimes they are. But you know what? If it makes the kid feel better for me to answer it 50,001, I will answer it. Now, I might remind them, dude, I already told you this. Please listen this time. You know, yeah, I might call them out. But if they need me to answer those last minute things, and this is where I'm going to go ahead very quickly, and I'm going to give this back to Alex. Alex, you talked earlier about the game plan. Those last blocks, or that last block before I see kids, we talk about possible scenarios, different types of game plans, because I want them to go in kind of considering which or a couple game plans they might make. So this is a perfect time, Alex, for you to maybe talk about those different ways that students could potentially plan out their test day.
Yeah, so the way that I approached, I only really made it like a game plan for the essay part because that's the most time that like we had the most work with that. But I remember going in there thinking, or before like the last review week, we called it, it's just kind of going over scenarios in my head. Like first, like I decided that for me that entire year, I kind of needed the most brain power for the rhetorical analysis and really understanding what, like breaking down exactly and getting into like and picking apart the speaker's choices and kind of reading in between the lines. But I remember if I found that the rhetorical analysis was something that I understood, then maybe I would start with the synthesis, because that's something that I usually ran a little bit over time with. And then I usually saved the question 3, which wasn't it like that? That was just like it gave you like a broad general statement pretty much, and it asked you to create your own argument. I saved that one to last because I remember being able to save time, like cut a little bit of time off. But it depends on like for teachers that want to apply this to their students, like really tell them to ask questions about their own, like be like ask themselves questions. What is the hardest essay? Like what do I struggle with the most? And I would say try to tackle that one first, but at the same time you don't want to spend all your time on that and then not get the points for the ones that you know you can. So it's kind of like balancing, just run through scenarios, like create mini scenarios, what I would say. So I would suggest doing rhetorical analysis first. This is just my suggestion. Then moving on to synthesis, then the question 3 at the end. But again, if a student finds synthesis hard because they can't really get through the passages, then maybe start with synthesis first. Or if they just don't think that it's situational, but definitely make sure that students are at least coming up with a plan based on their personal preference, is what I'm trying to say pretty much.
Yes. I want to speak really quickly to this, Brandon, if you don't mind. Beth said she is having her students do the hardest one last, which is another strategy. So I present my kids with options and say, you pick. So I say, you either start with your hardest one because you're going to be the freshest, so to speak. And so if you know that you could practically do, if you're really good at rhetorical analysis and you could practically do it in your sleep, first of all, I want to meet you. But second of all, then, maybe you save it for last, because even if you're running a little tiny short on time, if you're starting to get tired, you can, really just run away with that one. And so you start with your hard one first, so you can put more, fresh effort into it. But then alternatively, some students say, no, I want to do the 2 that I feel the better about. And then I'm going to save my hard one for the end, because if I'm going to run out of time, I might as well run out of time on the one that I already don't feel that great about anyway. So I present those options to the kids and I say, you pick what you want. And we do timed writes leading up to the exam during the month of April, so that they know, like, by the last week that we've been doing those, I'm like, all right, so how many of you are thinking you're going to start with your hardest? How many are going to start with your easiest? And some of them can't not imagine going out of order. Like there are kids that are like, absolutely not. Question 1, question 2, question 3, that's how it's going. That's how it's going to go. And that's fine too. But that's kind of what, Alex and I are talking about with coming up together collectively as teacher and student, a game plan.
And I love pointing out, I love the way Alex points out, and you reiterated, Christy, but Alex points out that it's situational. He said that a number of times. And I have so many students and sometimes teachers look to me, and I hear other consultants and presenters talk about this too, for tell me what I should do. Tell me what I have to do. What's the best thing for me to do? And the best thing is to practice different ways and see what you are most comfortable with, what allows you to manage time the best. It's similar to multiple choice. I love showing students the different strategies. The one I prefer is the one where I read the question stems first, so that it helps me have an idea of what's happening in the passage before I read it, before I do this cold read on this passage I probably don't care about. But there are other students who don't like that as much. And so the fact that it's situational is so important. It's hard, though, in our classrooms to find time to give students opportunities for those different approaches. And so working it in, talking about them, modeling them for students, and then allowing students to make those choices is really important. And so I see that we've got a question here
Alex,
coming from my buddy Beth Dibble. Beth, good
Yeah.
to see you again. This out of order is a good point. Should they do that on the multiple choice?
Alex, did you ever find it beneficial to play around with order on multiple choice, like maybe doing those writing, the writing style ones where it asked you, you know, the author's thinking of putting this sentence here, should they move it over, and then doing the more reading comprehension ones? Did you find it valuable to play around with that at all?
For me personally, I never did, because the way that I always tackle multiple choice is just like section by section. Like I don't really like because the way that we practice it was with the was on like AP Classroom, so it's kind of hard to jump around. So the way that I practiced it was just by doing it like in a line, and I didn't want to like switch it up on the test day because I was just more comfortable with just doing it linearly. So I just stuck with like what I was most comfortable with. But definitely that's the same thing with that goes with the essays. If you're someone that has been like practicing the multiple choice and is comfortable with doing the grammar part, the grammar section, I remember it being that's the closest thing I can relate it to first, then yeah, I mean, for me though, my personal preference is just going in order, and then if there really isn't like if there is a section that I can't really understand and I just need to skip it and move on, then yeah. But it's again situational thing. But I don't recall if there was like a passage that I didn't really like get while I was taking the test.
Yeah, Christy, thank you for spying that in the chat there and asking Alex to talk more on it. I appreciate it. And Beth, thank you for the question. I want to point out something that I saw, and then Christy, you commented on it. Michelle, everyone needs to read Michelle Brooks's comment. And Michelle, if we had more time, I'd ask you to talk more about it. But I love things like this that build student confidence. Going back and looking at their first essays and helping them to see how much they've grown. Like I almost get teary thinking about that. Like some of these kids, when they first come in that classroom, they can't get you a good paragraph. And just seeing that, hey, you can sit down in 40 minutes, churn out this essay. It is outstanding. And I see so much of that in these weeks leading up to it. I told a young lady today who everything she was answering as she was sharing her thesis and her ideas was starting with the word basically. And I was like, oh, stop. It's not basic. This is a complex idea and you're rocking it. Like own it, really own it and be more confident. And so I think, Michelle, your comment about with so many students leaning into the exam is confidence. And I like that idea a lot of sharing that, of having them go back and look at their first essays. So thank you for that. And yeah, there's a bit of a sidebar going on here about the multiple choice. Yeah, what I'd said about reading the questions first, when they did the online testing during COVID, you couldn't go back. I remember how irate, and that is not hyperbole, when they announced that to the consultants, we were irate because one of the things we talk about is skipping questions and coming back to them. And you can cycle through the questions now on Blue Book. But Becky's absolutely right. It would make it easier if it was on paper, but it's not. So just have students practice some things, and using AP Classroom might be a good way to do that. So Alex, I'm going to put you on the spot here and really just quick thinking, what comes to mind immediately for you? One or two final things students must remember going into the exam.
Just remember that like this is something that you've been doing all year, right? That in your classroom you built up like confidence over time. Like when you said that about that, like going back and reading that first essay, I remember doing that with Miss Seidel, and it was like it kind of just put like it boosted my confidence level, and just knowing that going into the test, like you just that you've got it, like have some confidence in yourself, because that can have a big impact on how you do. And also getting good sleep before, and like just getting in a good mindset, because it's not like there's no memorization involved with this. This is all just in your brain, and you got to be like it's got to be ready to go the day of the test. Otherwise it's just going to be Like I've had days where I'll look at a paper and I can't think of anything just because of how stressed or exhausted I am. But I know that I like on a regular day I can tear up that essay. So definitely good sleep, good breakfast, and just knowing that you got it. That's pretty much it. Like, because again, this is like it's a skill. You can't. There's nothing that you can do to go to the test to get an upper hand. Like you've been practicing it all year. So make sure that you're giving yourself the best chance to do well by treating your body good.
Yeah, great. And I'm going to add to that here in just a moment myself, or a little bit further with my big advice. And some of you may be familiar with my yearly tweet, and we'll talk about it here in just a moment. But Christy, what are you thinking? Maybe it's hints about the morning of or the night before, or maybe it's something about skills and content.
Well, I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna let you go ahead and move on. And
Okay.
then I have my final like 4 or 5 little bullet points of like, these are my reminders to leave you with. Good night, all. So let's move on.
Okay, so I'll share my 1 or 2 final things that students must remember. Mine are related to the content of the course, the skills of the course. And the 1 or 2 things I want students in the AP Lang course to remember is everything starts with the rhetorical situation, everything. And so they've constantly got to be thinking about purpose and audience and choices. If they keep that in mind, then they'll be able to attack most of the question, almost all the multiple choice, sorry, and most of the things that come up in the essays. So constantly thinking about the rhetorical situation is the key thing. The other thing I encourage students to do is micromanage their time. Get yourself an old school watch and set it on your desk and micromanage your time. Even students who tell me they don't like doing that come back to me later and say, hey, that was the best thing I could have done. So, all right, we will move on. What do you do to celebrate and build up students? We've already touched on this a little bit. I've seen some things pop up in the chat here, but I'd love to hear from you all in the chat. And this is so important. I wanted to keep this in here because I think it's so important to talk about this. And so we don't have a ton of time. But maybe we can talk about, hey, we bring them donuts. Hey, we do something like we do at the first essay of the year. What are you doing, Christy? What's something you're doing to celebrate and build up students as we move into this test?
So I think it's really, really important to celebrate even small milestones. So if you have students who have consistently been getting a 0.10, a 0.20, they just cannot get that thesis point, and they finally start getting the thesis. It might be a weak thesis, but it's a thesis. Then you need to celebrate the heck out of that thesis, right? I see all the time teachers that are very frustrated, and comparison is the thief of joy, right? But we all do it. We all need to compare one another. What's going to happen as soon as the exam's over is we're going to lament until July comes. When July comes, the Facebook group is going to be flooded with everybody talking about their pass rates. And you know what? When someone shares their 97% pass rate and I share my like 62% pass rate, and people are like, what? I thought she knew what she was doing. She's all over that Facebook site. She's a consultant. Well, maybe she's not as good as she thought. You know what? My 62% though, perspective wise, nobody knows that I'm also teaching, that we're teaching the course to every single sophomore in the school. Nobody knows that, the 97% pass rate that someone else may have might be for, a class that they were able to have of 12 who, and people's,
nobody knows that maybe most of those sophomores you were teaching were ELLs or
we
something
don't
like
know.
that. Yeah.
And so all of that stuff is, to use Alex's language here, situational as well. And so I think, when you hear people talking about, I just can't get my kids to get sophistication. And then another teacher says, I wish that was my problem. I can't get them to write a thesis. When your kid writes a thesis, you celebrate the heck out of it, because that's a point out of 6. That's big on the exam. So I think that celebration is a big deal. And then outside of content, I do something fun. I don't know, maybe it's not fun. Alex might be like, you think it's fun. We think it's kind of dumb, but we do an exam day breakfast. I let the kids sign up.
Awesome.
They do a Google Doc. They sign up to bring things. I open my room that morning, and, a lot of them come in, they grab donuts or, whatever. And I have music playing and I just send them on their way. I'm like, hey, you got this, you know, and some of them want to look in their folders and say, can I look at a couple of my essays real quick before I go? Sure. Some of them don't want to touch an essay because they're getting ready to go for 3 hours. I want to relax that morning. I want them to release some of those nerves because at that point it's out of their hands. So that's my little bit of celebration, I guess.
And I will say too, I love the idea of having food and things like that for students. Not everybody can do that. And I know, and I want to celebrate, but at the same time say, I'm sorry to those of you who are using your own money to buy those things. I know you're doing it. I did it. You know, I still do it with some of the teachers that I work with. And yeah, I know, I get it. But you know, sometimes you're asking kids to do it, but then you feel bad because some of the kids, you know, they can't afford it either. And I understand you all, I really do. So I think that's a great thing to do. Another thing that I started doing in my last few years in the classroom full time, and I've shared it with a lot of other teachers and done it with some teachers I've been working with, is throughout the year, keep a file or some notes on rock star moments for kids. The first time that one student who came to you barely able to write a paragraph writes a thesis or writes a paragraph or writes a comment that just blows some people away or floors some people. I know I always try to share some really fascinating comments and statements from the different writings we do throughout the year. I try to share those out loud to celebrate them. And I try to bring all that back to lift up different kids. Say, hey, remember the time that Alex wrote this, and share it. And it's my way of lifting up kids and talking about their journey throughout the year. Because I go back to what Michelle said about confidence and things. I think that's great. Genesis in the chat's talking about short individualized notes to each student. Yeah, I love it. I love the idea of being able to drop something like that. You know, either giving it to them the day of the test or getting it to them. I know one teacher who actually mails postcards that the school buys for her. I think that's wonderful. So I love it. Love you all sharing those ideas. One thing I'm going to share with you all here, and you'll have my contact information. I like to use topic sheets. So this relates to what a lot of you may know of as CHELPs, or the different idea of the different ideas of where you're going to get your information for a synthesis and argument, and that is current events, history, personal experience, etc. But I try to get students to work on these different topic sheets where they have to have some quotes, they have to have information from sources, but they talk about their domains and worlds and what are some related universal ideas and some different perspectives on these things, just to get students thinking outside of just the prompts. And so they're preparing themselves to have this stuff as they go into the exam. You can see a zoom in on this and you'll get this presentation and you'll get this recording so you can see it, but you can also drop me an email and I'll share that with you. And a couple of things for me to, let's be real before we get to Christy's stuff. This is for you, teachers, not necessarily students. And you need to contextualize these things. It's all situational, but you have done enough for them and they know it. There will be surprises, both good and bad. Just be ready for it. For some kids, like Christy mentioned earlier, a 2 on the exam will feel like a 5, and it should for you too, regardless of what any administrator says, regardless of what any parent or any kid says. You knew that kid couldn't get a 1 when they came into you, and they're lucky to get a 2 now, but they've worked and you've worked too. So most kids will not earn a qualifying score. It's just below 50%. All right. Don't beat yourself up. Okay. It's not likely because of you. It is a timed exam. It's probably time that does it. They will still take these skills forward. And honestly, if they don't know it by now, there's not a whole heck of a lot you can do between now and then, except boost their confidence. Okay. The last thing I like to remind people here is water your flowers. Sometimes you just have to focus on the kids who are working the hardest. Water and rocks doesn't mean they're going to grow. All right. Christy, all you, and I love your unicorn picture down here.
Oh, well, fortunately, I think I'm a better teacher than I am a gardener. So, there are no real plants in this room.
I got you.
My
I
house,
got you.
really. But I will say that my caveat here is that the discussion we're having, as we all know, but I just want to say it out loud, that this is all just exam focus. This is exam speak, right? Because we could have a whole another hour-long webinar where we talked about nothing but the fact that this test is so much more than this test, right? That the course is so much more than this test, and that good writing is good writing, and sometimes the structure of the test is not what we see in a college classroom, where we can talk about that all day. So this discussion is the scope of the exam only, right?
Mhm.
One thing that we have to learn that we can't control apathy. Obviously, student apathy, colleague apathy, parent apathy, like we can't control that. And I think we've always had a little bit of that, because let's face it, we've got teenagers. The post-COVID years have been, I think, particularly hurtful in the classroom with dealing with apathy. There are studies out there that have various timelines for how long it will take students to be back on quote unquote track, but if that will ever happen, because in the meantime, while COVID has happened, we've had the increase of all kinds of new social media apps and stuff, and you've got kids on there now, and it's very hard to keep them focused. It's hard to keep them interested. We cannot control that. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I feel like you need to hear it, and I need to hear it because I get frustrated too. I think what I have to hear for myself even more is that I can't control school-based, site-based decisions. I can't control school district decisions, state, federal decisions. I can't control that my students missed a ton of days when there was a college tour we had recently. It was a beautiful opportunity for these kids, right? Alex is like, there she goes again, fussing about it. It was a great opportunity for our kids. Usually it's done early in the second semester. For whatever reason, it had to be planned a little later. So these kids missed numbers of days right before exams. I have to tell myself, I can't control that. I can't. There's nothing I can do. I'm in the middle of test prep, whatever. Politically, we know that, and I'm in the state of Florida. There's a lot going on with education right now. I can't control any of that, but what I can control is my own passion in the classroom. I can control my passion for students. That passion, when I finally see that kid can click. And I got to say, so Alex will admit, I'm not the most emotional, mushy kind of person, right? It's just not me. But hearing him talk tonight after being with me for a couple of years, and I think hopefully seeing, what he's learned, hopefully from a humanities course, it is so beautiful. And I'm so proud. Alex, I'm so proud of you. Like I'm so proud of you. You have no idea. And I can control the passion that I have to see students become better. But and I can control the encouragement I try to give them. So my final points are, when it comes to stamina and timing, teachers are really worried that their kids are going to run out of time, and it will go with intros and conclusions. I'll put those 2 bullet points together. Actually, if you're going to sacrifice one, honestly, sacrifice the introduction. In my opinion, this is all my opinion, sacrifice the introduction. Put a thesis statement.
I echo that opinion. Thesis and go. Yep.
Thesis and go. I'd like to have you tell your students to get rid of this myth of the man behind the curtain at the reading. This idea that some, teacher that's, got it out for them with a red pen is sitting there ready to mark all of the mistakes. That is not what happens at the reading. At the reading, we are begging for the kid to, is there even a phrase in this paragraph that's pointing to some commentary? We are looking for it. We're saying, hey, look at this. Do you think that that's some commentary? Can I give them the point?
I've seen so many readers mad because they'll say, I wanted to give this kid I wanted to give
Yes.
it to him. He just didn't
Yes.
get me there. Right. Right.
Please set their minds at ease that this is not we take away points because their comma's in the wrong place. There is no taking away points. It's where does it best fit in those boxes on the rubric. That again, that's a whole nother webinar on scoring. There is a danger of kids feeling like their essays have to fit into this box of the 5-paragraph essay that was taught to them since elementary school. More often, my students actually write 4 paragraphs. They very often write an introduction and 2 really strong body paragraphs, a conclusion, and they keep it moving because it's 40 minutes. A lot of times the kids don't have the time for that 3rd body paragraph, and that's fine. For me personally, I'd rather have 2 that are well supported than 3 that one of those is just kind of there and meh because they felt like they had to have 5 paragraphs, because then the essay is uneven. And if you look at the rubric, uneven is not a score you want to see. And then for row C, going back to that complexity point that I said earlier, complexity is finding tensions. Tension is going to lead you to nuance. Nuance is what you see in the row C language. Got your point there. And
this is complexity or tension I'm doing. I'm not trying to clap with my fist.
Tension.
Just so we're clear.
And then for Q3, I see teachers in the Facebook group today were mentioning they're not sure how to talk to their kids about getting evidence in Q3. I find that for evidence, if they make connections and have varied types of evidence where they connect maybe examples from the past that connect to the present somehow, and they meet to make the same argument, or a personal anecdote that they somehow match with and connect to something historical, but some kind of duality that they bring together in their evidence, I find is very helpful. Row C, already talked about, there is no unicorn anymore. Okay, go.
All right. No,
Your turn.
thank you. Thank you for that. You wanted to share this as well. Do you still want to share this?
It'll go out in the slides. I just want people to breathe and have perspective that at the end of the day, it's an exam. It's going to go on about its merry way. The kids are going to go on about their merry ways. And if I had more time, I would tell you my anecdotal story about my own children, one of who was in my class and the other who is going through the course right now in another class. And I would give you the perspective of, it feels like it's everything, but it's going to be okay. And so this is one of Clint Smith's new poems. And I'm absolutely one of the biggest fans of Clint Smith. And so I wanted to share it. So you can read it on your own, guys.
Great. Thank you. We will stick around for a few minutes afterwards for FAQs from you all. A couple of common questions. I'll touch on real quickly, real briefly. If students don't finish the MCQs, they need to give an answer for all of them, and they need to pick a letter and go. Make sure they stick to the same letter statistically. If they choose different letters, they can actually be answering around the answers. So just pick a letter and go. Most students do the essays in order. We talked about that. Does the length of the essays matter? Yes and no. But really it comes down to commentary and the development of what they're trying to say. Can students use outside information in the synthesis? I get this all the time. Yes, please do use outside information in the synthesis so that show that you're connecting to those things beyond the essay itself. Can students mention text from the MCQs when they are or the other essays when they're writing the FRQs? It's a strange question. It seems that I'll get a lot, and yes, they certainly can. And teachers say, what if I didn't get to all of the AP units? It's okay. And if you taught in depth what you needed to cover to get students there, you're fine. And really, if you get through unit 7, you're probably going to be just fine. All right. Shameless self-promotion. Check out the textbooks. I'd love to talk more about those. Also our partners with Applied Practice doing mock exams. I know that season has passed, but we're doing great work with them, and it starts at $15 a student, but everything's negotiable. And we do full data readouts and everything with that. You can check out Tim and I at Garden of English doing our summer workshops. Christy, you've got some workshops coming up. You're doing UGA this summer.
Come see me at UGA, y'all. Go Dogs.
Yeah,
and then I'll be in Seattle at the conference.
Back to your alma mater, right?
I am so ready to be back in God's country up there in Athens.
Good for you. And then she's also been accepted as presenting at the AP Annual Conference in Seattle. I will be there too, presenting with Jennifer Fletcher and Sarah Zerwin, and I will get to hang out with Christy a little bit. You can also check out her website, teachingrhetoric.com. You can get her on Twitter and on Instagram. I think a lot of you also know her from the Facebook group. Always remind teachers, we are risk takers and mistake makers, just like we want our students to be. And I like to get this in so I can get a shtick in on people who are banning books, the books that the world calls immoral or the books that show the world its own shame. All right, here's my workshops this summer. Yes, I'm doing too many, but that's all right. That's just how things play out. Come see me. When you get this deck, these are all linked. I think Christie's are linked as well. And finally, thank you so much. I think Kristen's going to tell you that there's a quick survey coming your way. You can get me on Instagram and Twitter. And you can also find me on the AP Literature and AP Language Facebook groups, or you can email me at brandon.abdon@gmail.com.
Alex,
great
you
night,
are
everyone.
so lovely.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. You might
my
make it
pleasure.
after
Don't worry
all,
about
kid.
Alex, where are you going after college? I mean, sorry, after high school.
I'm not sure yet, to be honest. I'm kind of just trying to finish my junior year, and then I'll spend summer deciding. I got a couple things that I'm doing over summer. I mean, I'm looking at a couple of schools. I mean, I kind of want to tour. I don't know how Miss is going to feel about this, but Georgia Tech. I don't know if there's a rivalry there. So I'm looking at. I want to tour the campus though, because a big deal for me is campus. So yeah.
Talk to me tomorrow, buddy.
I still gotta figure a couple things out though. So yeah.
All right. But you are thinking college.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
For sure.
I didn't know if you were thinking military, or sometimes people want to take some time off and travel or something. So
yeah, maybe. We'll see.
Great.
Well, let me just jump in and thank all of you as well, Brandon, Christy, and Alex. All of your information was greatly appreciated. You sound like, Alex, you have a great future in front of you, and Christy, you are doing a great job with your class, and I love the comments from all of the teachers tonight. Just a reminder again, we will send out an email to all the attendees tomorrow with the recording as well as the slide deck. If you are attending the next webinar that starts at 7:45 Eastern time on AP Lit, you will need to exit this webinar and log into the link for that session, but don't do it just yet. Just want to make sure that you know, if you would like to learn more from Brandon, please take the time to subscribe to the Next Step blog from Perfection Learning. You can find that at nextstep.perfectionlearning.com. And there you'll find recordings of all of the past webinars that Brandon has done, blog posts, lesson plans, as well as announcements about future webinars. We will include a survey asking you what types of information you'd like to see in future webinars. We'll include that in the email that goes out to you tomorrow. Thank you for joining us this evening. We hope to see some of you in the next session, and have a great finish to your week and a wonderful testing experience. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for
Bye, everyone.
coming.
Thank you.